Good morning and welcome to our worship service. We are so glad that you chose to worship with us this morning. If you haven't already done so, we encourage you to take some time to fill out one of these connection cards. It is a great way for us to know how to be praying for you and also a great communication form for the church. So make sure and take some time and fill one of these cards out today.
These last 2 Wednesdays, we've taken a break from Centerpoint Student Ministries and Connect Kids due to Christmas break. But this coming Wednesday, we're getting back at it. So if you're between preschool all the way on to 12th grade, make sure and check us out this Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m.
One of the things that I love about Epicenter is that there are ministries to connect with kids and teens, and we're also starting our life groups in the month of February. But here is a great way that you could connect on a monthly basis with different groups. This last Thursday, we had our men's group over at the rec center where we played volleyball. If you missed it, make sure and check out the next date, which is happening in February. Here are some other ways that you could connect with people within the church.
This coming Thursday, the ladies are heading over to the rec center to play some volleyball. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. and it's for ladies that have graduated high school all the way on up. So if you don't have plans, make sure and come and join us. There are 2 more events coming up this month that will also be reoccurring every month. The first is the Fine Dine, where we go out and spend some time together at a restaurant, and the next one, it will either be a movie night or game night. Make sure and check your worship programs for more info.
I have seen the pace of your life, the stress, the anxiety, the constant movement, rushing from one place to the next, chasing after your desires, or running from your fears. I see how you struggle, striving to meet your needs all on your own. I see the burdens placed upon you and the burdens you place upon yourself. In the midst of this chaos and hurry, I am calling out to you to slow down. Be still and know that I am God.
Back in the month of August, around here at the church, it was just chaotic. It was just busy. There was a lot of things that were going on, and we're preparing for our official church launch, which happened in September. And there was other things that were happening in the midst of it. We were planning for other church events that would be coming up in the fall. We were planning for student ministries events. We were planning for the kids ministry. We were planning for the future of the church. And in the midst of the chaos, you try to find time to do life with people. And sometimes that's difficult because there's just something always going on, and to slow down just seems like an impossible task to do because everything needs your attention at the moment. And in this crazy time, some friends of ours from the church, Marty and Linda Covert, asked us if we could just spend some time with them, and they had some monarch butterflies that they were actually racing, and they were going to be springing up to life. And they said, do you want to just come out and have some lunch with us? And we figured out a day to actually go over to their house and spend some time with them. But right before we went to their house, I had a meeting that I had just gotten done with, and I was going to come to the church. I was checking some messages, some emails, and right after that, I got into the car, and I received a call. So I just sit down with my family in the car to go over to Marty and Linda's, and on the way there, I'm answering this call, and it takes me 3 minutes after I get there to finally get off the phone. And it was all good. It was a great conversation. But I get there, and I get into Marty's house, and I know that as soon as we get done with the coverts, I have to come back because there's another meeting that I have to attend to. And for some of us, this may seem normal. This is just normal. Chaos is part of our everyday life. We're constantly doing something, and there's really no window to get anything else done but what is on your agenda. So our lives really have no room for error when it comes to schedule, right? We have no time to just stop and just be, because we're always running, we're always busy. But as I was there at Marty's house, right before the next meeting, we're sitting down, and he's grilling hot dogs. My kids are inside with my wife and Linda, and they're watching life spring up from a worm into a monarch butterfly. And it's just neat. I finally just get to the point where I could just unwind. I just stop, and I start to look at a nice, almost end of summer fall day, and it's just calm. You start to see the serene, scenic view, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful to just kind of take it all in. And I'm having a meaningful conversation with a friend of mine. But at the same time, this just didn't seem feasible because life was just too chaotic. And the reason that I finally had to stop and just be is because I had no signal on my phone. So there was no way to actually check anything. But you're there, and you finally just take a moment to breathe. You finally have a moment where you could just be. And life has a way of getting chaotic. And some things can't be avoided. Some things just happen. I get it. In our life, there are things that are non-negotiables. They just need to happen, and they become part of our schedule. But if I'm being completely honest with you, and some of you may not like to hear this, but some of the things that we do, myself included, are self-inflicted. We actually are doing it to ourselves to where we have no time left. We have no time to just stop and just know that He is God. We have no time to spare. And sometimes that happens from having a hard time to saying no to things, right? We just have to say yes to every single thing that comes up. And sometimes it's not even things that we do, it's things that we involve ourselves with. Sometimes it's things that we're trying to keep up with, trying to stay plugged into the world. We want to be people who are plugged into everything that is going on in the world. And when it comes to being busy, we find ways to stay busy. And because we thrive on it. It's not only something that we do, we thrive on being busy. Because we're trying to keep up with what others are doing, and we try to figure out, how their time is being taken up. And one way that we do that is by going on social media, right? What are people doing? What are they involving themselves in? And the other night, I was at home, and I was laying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. We had just laid our kids down to go to sleep, and my wife and I are just laying there trying to unwind for the day. And I did something that's not very uncommon. I grabbed my phone and I clicked on an app, and that was Facebook. So, I go on Facebook and I'm just going through the thread, and finally, have you ever taken time to just figure out how you're spending your time? Have you ever made time to intentionally figure out what you're doing and if it's worth it? Without even trying, that night, I realized that Facebook was something that I was just doing. And there's nothing wrong with Facebook. I'm not saying that Facebook is a bad thing. It's actually been a great tool for me to be able to connect with people, get to know people, and just be able to figure out when we can get together. But for me, Facebook really was becoming something that was taking up a lot of my time. So I decided to just do something that would help me unplug. I just deleted the app. So the next day, I wake up and I go to my phone, and I had a free minute. I go and hit the icon that is no longer there. The app is no longer there, and I'm like, it's not there. So I put my phone down. I keep on working. A few hours later, I grab my phone again, and I go and I try to hit the app again. That's no longer there. And that happened the entire week. So for the last week and a half, I've gone cold turkey. I'm trying to figure out how to cope with not going on Facebook. But, it's interesting how our lives really always go and gravitate to something that we call busy. We always go to something that becomes a tool that takes our time away. And for me, that was Facebook. So once again, I'm taking a little bit of a break from Facebook, not because it's evil, but just because it has consumed my time. And you have to ask yourself, what consumes your time? Maybe it's not social media. And, there's other ways that you can stay busy. Maybe it's sports, music lessons, committee meetings, extracurricular activities. And the list can just go on, right? There's so many things that you could involve yourself with. And, I might get stoned today for throwing stones, but it's just a reality of it. We are people who stay busy with everything that we can possibly imagine, and we're willing to just surround ourselves with these things and then complain that we don't have time. We just don't have time. And being part of a society that is busy, sometimes it's not only expected, but it becomes normal. That's what normal people do, is they just stay busy. Some of the things that I talked about are good things. They're not bad things. But I love how Pastor Craig Rochelle in the book Weird puts it. He says, you have to start saying no to good things so that you'll be able to say yes to the best things. See, sometimes we're very good at saying yes to things that are okay, but they're not the best things. They're not the things that have significance. The problem is that we have a flawed view of what is best and what is good, because our culture defines what is best, and sometimes it's not. It defines what normal is, and we try to hit this target. But as followers of Jesus, we don't have to try to live to this target of what society has put upon us, what culture has put as the normal. We are to live by the word of God. And for some people, this is a difficult thing. It's like, well, I'm not going to be dictated by the word of God. And as followers of Jesus, if you're a follower of Jesus, that is really what dictates our lives, because we ought to live how Christ lived. And we are not called to adapt to what society defines as normal. We are called to live in a way that it's defining who Jesus is in us. As followers of Jesus Christ, we are called to live countercultural, which is one of our values, is to live apart from what the culture is living. Philippians 1:27 says this: "Above all, you must live as citizens of heaven, conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you, I will know that you are standing together with one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news." See, as followers of Jesus, we are called to live as residents of this planet. This is not our home, because we're citizens of heaven, and we are supposed to conduct ourselves in a manner that is worthy of the citizenship that we have in heaven, because this is just temporary. This is just something that we're kind of coasting through. This is just something that is so small, yet we place so much emphasis on it. This life is short. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you, I will know that you are standing together in one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. The way that we live is to live counterculturally, to live different than what the world lives, to live as citizens of heaven and living for the best things, not the good things. The good things are okay, but they're not the best things. As we go through this series, we're going to be going through a 4-week series called Countercultural, and we're going to be talking about different things that we are called to live by. And this is difficult, once again, because sometimes we don't want to know how we should live our lives. We should just live however we want to. But at the same time, understand that the Great Commission says, "Go into all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and," there's the "and teaching them all that I have commanded." See, we have to understand what God has commanded so that we understand how to live, so that we can live the way that he has called us to live, counterculturally. And we are to be united in one spirit and one purpose, fighting, contending for the faith, and sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. And the world that we live in is temporary, but at the same time, we act as though it's the eternal, because that's what we strive for. That's what we live for. And, I'm going to just say this. Sometimes as parents, we actually do a poor job at articulating that to our kids, because we are willing to push everything that is temporary into their faces and say that that's what they should live for instead of living for that. We don't tell them to live different. We tell them to live according to the normal, according to what the world calls normal. And time is often viewed as something that has no eternal value, no consequence, right? Time is just something that you have. It's just something that you could spend however you want to. So we use it up like we have no accountability in it. But if you were to ask yourself, how much of your time is spent with eternal perspective, really looking at the life that is to come, what would the answer be? 10%? Maybe it's not even that high. Maybe it's 5%. Maybe for some others it's 50%, 60%, 80%. And the things that you're doing might not be bad things once again. But at the same time, do they have eternal perspective in it? Is it something that is far beyond what you get out of this life and looking into the eternal? Sometimes we surround ourselves and we're running ourselves so thin that we don't look at it this way. And I love how Craig Rochelle talks about it in his book. He says, "I've heard it said, if the devil can't make us really bad, then he'll try to make us really busy." And that is the truth. If the devil can't make you bad, he'll take you away from the very thing that you should be doing. If he can keep you busy, that actually disqualifies you from what you're trying to accomplish. And we have a lot of busy people in our culture today that are not living the way that we are called to live because we're just too busy. We're just too busy to add anything else to our plate. Busy people don't have time to spare. Busy people don't have time to do what we've been called to do. Our lives are taken up by agendas, fulfilling goals, and measuring up to the culture. So today I want you to really focus on this verse. Ephesians 5:15 says this. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but live like those who are wise. Be careful how you live. Don't live like fools. Live like those who are wise. Many of us are living like fools. We don't really have time to do anything. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. See, every moment that you are given, actually take advantage of it. Don't just live as though there's no consequence. Don't live like it's just something that you just get and you get to do whatever you want with it. That's free will. You get to do whatever you want with it, but there is a consequence for the way that you spend your time. So there's that caution. Be careful how you live. Make the most of every opportunity. Don't act thoughtlessly. So with your time, understand what God wants you to do. You can fill up your life with things that seem good, but they're going to deprive you of the things that are best. You may fill up your schedule with things that will make you feel full, but they actually leave you empty. They suck the life out of you, and they suck the purpose out of you. You have to understand what the Lord wants you to do and do that. Fill up your schedule with those things, because keeping your schedule full doesn't mean that you have a full life. And I mean, just think about people who are busy, who are constantly going and doing something. Those are typically the people that will say, I don't have a life, right? The people that are the busiest don't have a life because they're just trying to keep up with everything that's in their schedule. And it deprives you of time. There are so many people that are trying to keep up with their kids' schedules, but can't figure out how to keep up with their kids' lives. See, they're just trying to run alongside their kids and trying to do everything that their kids are doing, but they have no idea who their kids are. There are people who are married that are trying to figure out how to schedule time with other people together, but they can't figure out how to schedule time together with each other, and their marriage is falling apart. See, we are people who are constantly busy trying to just schedule something so that we could look as though we have it all together when really we are losing it all. Everything is falling apart. We have no room for error. And these things that you're involving yourself might be good, but they're depriving you of the best things. They're depriving us of the best things. See, if I have figured out how to schedule time for someone else, but I can't schedule time for my wife, that's neglecting. I've lost sight of the best thing. If I have figured out how to keep up with my kids' schedule, but I have no idea who they are, once that schedule is gone, I have no idea who in the world they were. You could try to keep up with everybody with your schedule, but you have to be intentional of how you're investing and that perspective of what is important and what is the best. This last spring, we had a race here in town that I was involved with, and nobody wants to be in my team. I'm not in shape to run, but I was in a team anyways, and the goal of this race was to actually get to the finish line as quickly as possible. But along the way, there was different challenges. There was different challenges that were worth points. So what you're trying to do is run to the end of the line while trying to collect these points. But as we're running, we noticed that there was people that were actually getting really far ahead of us. And at that point, it's kind of like, why wouldn't it catch up to them? Because that's a lot of points. These things have some points, but at the same time, that's what is worth the most. So, you try to keep up with everything that is happening on the sidelines, but at the same time, your focus is on the front. That's where you want to get to. And in the midst of that, we ended up losing some important items because we're so busy trying to catch up. This is pretty much how our lives look. We're in a rat race. We're just trying to get through life, and we see what other people are going to, and we're just trying to get right next to them or get ahead of them. And we lose sight of everything else that was along the road. And it's like, then we look back and we're like, oh, I guess I missed that, and I missed that too, and I missed this too. We're just people who are in a race. We're just trying to do things as quickly as possible in a mad rush to try to just keep up. We just want to keep up. So we fill up our schedules with, what people are doing. Our schedules are full, but our lives are empty. And you know what? You could deny it to anyone else. And it might be true. I mean, maybe you do have a great life. But at the same time, you may be able to fool other people, but you can't fool yourself when you're behind closed doors of how empty your life is, even if your schedule is full. And I've wrestled with that because sometimes that is me. My schedule is full, but I feel like I have no life. And time seems dispensable. It feels like it can be replaced at a later time. Even with our kids, I know for me, that's one of the things that marriage and kids are one of the things that I struggle with time. Because sometimes I feel like, well, you know what, I need to be busy for this time, but I could just replace it at a later time. I'll just deal with it at a later time in a different way. A.W. Tozer wrote this: when you kill time, remember that it has no resurrection. When you kill time, it's never coming back. It's done. You killed it. Psalm 39:4 says this: Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered, how fleeting my life is. You have made my life no longer than the width of my hand. My entire lifetime is just a moment to you. At best, each of us is but a breath. Take a second and do this with me. So just take a deep breath in right now. Let it out. In comparison to eternity, that's a life. That is what we live for. That moment that you just exhaled. And yet, we consume our time with everything that is pointless. It might be okay, but it's not the best. In light of eternity, your life is so short. My life is so short. Yet, are you trying to keep up with the culture and how you're spending your time? When we go to Texas, we're hoping to go to Texas sometime soon. And one of the things that I always think about is when we go to Texas, my older sister is really big into her reality TV. And one of the shows that she's really big into is Keeping Up with the Kardashians. So, we go to her house and she'll watch the Kardashians. And for us, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, I'm not even that big into sports. I'm willing to watch hockey for whatever else, just so that I don't have to watch the Kardashians. But it's interesting, for them, it's like they're trying to see what the Kardashians are doing. And what's interesting is they spend time trying to figure out how to keep up with the Kardashians. And right after that, they're trying to just keep up. See, they spend time learning how to catch up, and they spend time doing the catch up. We deprave ourselves of time with what we're doing. Think about it this way. You are but a breath here on earth, and every single moment that you have lived, it'll never come back. It's done. You've lived it. The moment that you entered life, the second that you entered life, the second afterwards, you began to die. There was your moment of birth, and right after that, you started dying. Because there is no moment where you will feel the most alive than the moment that you stepped into this planet. What are you doing with that time? What am I doing with that time? Time has no resurrection. Make the most of each moment and spend your time wisely, not trying to keep up with the culture, but trying to find purpose in every single minute of your life. Because the moment that you are trying to keep up with the times is the moment that you will be depraved of time. Whatever it is. I know what it's been for me, but I've had to be honest with myself and just say, you know what? This is how I'm consuming my time, and it can't continue. It can't continue to happen that way. And, having a family, being married, it's time consuming because they're what God has gifted me. But sometimes, it's hard because I know with my kids, they spend a lot of time here at the church. They've actually asked, why do we even have a house? And the answer is, I have no idea, really. But we spend a lot of time here. And sometimes, it's like, I know that I'm depraving them of some things that other families may be able to do. And I think about different families that they'll involve their kids in every single thing that they could possibly involve them in. In a way, I feel like, man, okay, I can't do that. But at the same time, I've also looked at it in the other aspect. But they're also seeing that this life is temporary and we are vested into the kingdom of God. And maybe sometimes it's hard to say yes to anything else because you haven't figured out how to say no to anything else. And that's another thing that I fall, under the category. Sometimes I don't have room for error because I can't say no. I have to say yes to everything. I become deprived of time in the midst of trying to keep up with everything. And we have really come into a generation that doesn't understand the concept of rest. It's something that we brag about how busy we are. Because if you're not busy, then you must be lazy. And that's one thing that I do battle with. I mean, I'm being honest. Sometimes it's difficult for me because I don't want for there to be any stone to be cast about that. My work ethics are not very good or whatever. And I have a dad who is extremely hardworking. So I know that, for him, that's one of the things that he did instill well into me, maybe a little bit too much. But, when it comes down to it, I don't want to be construed as lazy in any way. So to take a moment and just breathe is difficult because our culture has created this monster that if you stop and breathe, you must be lazy. Yet when God created the heavens and the earth, he creates the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and the seventh day he rested. And then as we look into the Ten Commandments in the book of Exodus, we find that God says to honor the Sabbath, a day of rest. I don't even want to answer this myself, but just ask yourself, when was the last time that you actually took that? When was the last time that you actually rested? One of our board members asked me that, and it was embarrassing because I'm like, it's been a while. When was the last time that you actually rested? Just stopped in your track and rested, And for some of us, we just haven't figured out how. And the command was given, and Jesus says, it's like when we think about that command of taking time to rest, we don't take it, but at the same time, Jesus says the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of the people and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. Let me put it this way. So in other words, Jesus says there's a day of rest so that you could actually use it because you need it, not so that you could just fulfill another rule, another law. It was made so that you could rest because our Creator understands that as His creation, we need a moment of rest. We need to just stop and unwind. But yet we are living in a culture that's considered to be lazy. That's just lazy. Why would you do something like that? For most people, we have no idea how to rest. We work 7 days of the week, every hour of the day. Yet at the same time, God gave us that gift of rest, not so that we could catch up on everything else that we need to do, everything that didn't get accomplished at work, everything that didn't get accomplished at the church. He gave us that day of rest so that we could recover. And the moments that I've done that, it's been phenomenal. I've stayed in my pajamas all day, not worried about anything that's going on in the world. And it's just that moment of, this is what it feels like to actually rest. We were created to work, but we're also created to rest. Work hard 6 days, rest the seventh. And I need to make note of that because I understand. Sometimes it's just go, go, go. And sometimes we don't understand. And I've talked to business owners or people that are self-employed. And one of the things that they will often say, or some will often say, is that they work on Sundays because time is money, right? So you can't stop and just rest because time is money. Every single minute can be $1 made. So just to point that out there, or just to put it out there, the reality of it is if that's been a statement that has come out of your mouth, then understand what Jesus said when he said, you cannot serve both God and money. See, money is something that will take you away from God because that's how you will serve with your time. That's how your time will be spent. That's how my time would be spent. But we live in a culture that lives and breathes for money. And money becomes our God. Our time means nothing because money means everything. So we work our lives away, willing to do anything for a profit. And James writes this in regards to just putting things into perspective. He says, look here, you who say today or tomorrow we are going to a certain town and will stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit. How do you know that what your life will be like tomorrow. Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, then it's gone. James really reminds us and brings us back to the reality that life is short. And to put it into perspective, sometimes we have so many plans to make money. And Jesus actually talks about how sometimes we're storing and storing. And what if you store and you die the next day? Know what your time on earth is going to be like. Yet at the same time, we live and breathe for that money. So to put it into perspective, put it this way. Money can be made, but time can't be bought. You can't go and purchase time. Every day, time isn't. Time is a gift. And there are things that are good that we involve ourselves with, once again, but they don't satisfy. They make us busy, but they leave us empty of life. We are people who try to keep up and sacrifice this gift of time, and our banks may be full, but our lives are empty. Our time on earth that we were given was to know God and to make him known. You know, as I was preparing for this message, just thinking about it, really, I mean, what is our purpose? You know, what does your life look like? And thinking about it in a human perspective, if my life is composed of just waking up every single day, working for 7, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, every single day of the week, rest one, raise a family, they move out of the house, then I'm with my wife, and you know we die, grow old and die together. If that's it, and I'm not saying that those things aren't good. I understand that. I think that they're great. But at the same time, it just seems like there's no purpose. But if my purpose is to know God and to make him known, understanding that there's more to this life than what I see right here, that puts things into perspective. That's what I'm living for. And, you know, when we talk about time, when it comes to time and money, it's very difficult to talk about that within the church, because I think we have preconceived notions that sometimes this pitch for time and money is because the church is asking for something. I'm not asking for anything. You know, I'm not looking for more volunteers. I am saying if you want to volunteer, please volunteer. But at the same time, that's not why we're going through this message. We're going through this message because your time doesn't have to be consumed here. Your time has to be consumed in your calling, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's at church, or out in the community. And if you're not willing to do what God has called you to do, you're being unwise stewards with your time. I'm being an unwise steward with my time. Whatever it looks like. Once again, maybe it's you spending time with your spouse. Make time. Stop saying that you don't have time. I need to stop saying that. With your kids. Invest into your kids. And I get it. We're tired because we're busy. Make time for your kids. Something else that I need to take to heart. We need to understand that time is something that is a gift, something that we have been given, and we have to use it, once again, for not living for our culture, but standing together in one spirit and in one purpose, contending for the faith, fighting for the faith, sharing the good news, living the good news, doing life the way that we have been called to do it counterculturally so that people could see Christ in us. And keeping this in mind, that all of us must die eventually. Our lives are like water spilled out on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Our lives, once they are done, you can't go and just try to bring it back together. It's gone. It's finished. How you lived will determine how you spend eternity. Let that sink in. How you spent your time will determine your eternity. And sometimes we are mortal beings that have an understanding of time, but at the same time, we just don't really show it by the way that we live. Because we live in a society that is high-paced, just like the video. Everything just goes, goes, goes. And we don't ever stop just to know that He is God. We don't just stop and just soak it in. Because our society doesn't know how to stop. This last Thursday, I was meeting with a pastor friend of mine who has since left his ministry of pastoring a church here in Minnesota after 25 plus years, and he actually decided to go over to Thailand on missionary work. And he serves with a ministry called Exodus Road, where they do some intense things. They actually take men and women that have been in the sold into human trade. And as we're talking about it, just about his ministry and his time, and just trying to figure out how, we could maybe partner up with him, or just try to figure out how to be in prayer for him. I asked him a question. He had posted a video or a picture a while back about his time in Thailand, and it was a unique picture. It was just a bunch of people from Thailand that were standing still. They weren't doing anything. They were just standing. And I asked him what that was about. I had kind of seen the part that said what had happened, but it turns out that in Thailand, 2 times during the day, at 6 or at 8 in the morning and at 6 in the afternoon, they play this song called the Song of the King. When this song is played, the people in Thailand stop and they sing or recite the song. They stop. See, the world stops so that they could sing a song to the king. And anybody who is caught disrespecting the king goes away for a while, for a long time. When was the last time that you just stopped and just thank God, thank the king? And maybe the answer is not very often, but today I want to take some time to really just pause, take some time to stop and to think about what the king did over 2,000 years ago. Because sometimes we're so busy, it just doesn't hit us. We're just too busy to stop and to think about that. Today I want to take that time as we enter in. We're going to spend some time remembering the sacrifice that was made for us. That sacrifice that made a way back to the Father through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And it's something that, once again, sometimes we just do. We just do it because that's what you do at church. And I want you to understand that there is a significance to this that is so powerful that you have to understand what you're taking. 1 Corinthians 11:27 says that anyone who eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord unworthily is guilty of sinning against the body and blood of the Lord. See, it's kind of like the Song of the King. Understanding that there is such a significance to it that you seriously have to search your heart. Here at Epicenter, we observe communion every other month, bi-monthly, and we practice what is called open communion, which means that if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, we encourage you to take communion with us. But if you aren't a follower of Jesus Christ, please just let this pass, once again, because we are taking something of significance. And if you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, you know what? I encourage you, talk to me, talk to one of the volunteers, talk to the person that you came with about this relationship with Jesus Christ, because it is of great significance. And as we go into communion, I want you to take some time. I encourage you to take some time and just really search your heart and maybe ask God to expose ways that maybe you've sinned against him or sinned against a brother or a sister, and make things right. 1 Corinthians 11:28 says, that is why you should examine yourself before eating the bread and drinking the cup, because it is something of significance. So take some time and just search your heart before taking communion. Figure out in ways that maybe you have sinned against God or against others. And the other thing is just take some time, slow down enough, and search your heart to see how maybe your perspective of time, your perspective of schedule has gotten so skewed that you're living for yourself instead of living for God. Take some time in this song. There's a part that I want you to really just let it soak in and what it says. It says, gone are the days I'm chasing after what won't last. I'm done with building these castles that crumble like sand. Knees on the floor, I finally found everything I needed. It was always right in front of me. You gave me a name and you changed everything. See, what are you chasing after? Is it the eternal? Is it understanding what Christ did? Or is it the temporary? Stop chasing castles that will crumble and really just let God take your life and do something great with it. But as we enter into this time, just unwind, just like I had to unwind when I was with Marty and Linda. Unwind and let it soak in.